All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Long time no chat. It's good to be with you, and I need to do more live. Why is that? Because I always want to make sure that I'm answering your questions in real time, not just on the video. So I'll let the audience build here for a second. If nobody shows up, then that's okay too. I'll talk about VA loans for probably the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. Really don't know where this is going to go as far as the things that I'm going to talk about. However, there are a couple of important things that I do think are worth mentioning here. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what's up, Mick? How you doing? Yes, absolutely. I agree. Mick, if you have questions, just make sure you drop them in the comment section and I'll make sure to answer them. Good to go. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was Vice Chair Fed Bowman. Her name is Michelle Bowman. And the reason why this name is important that you guys want to know about her is because she is the one that is advocating for additional rate cuts this year. She's calling for as many as 3 or 4. And if that happens, I could see mortgage interest rates on VA loans going down much more. And if rates go down, what I think is going to take place is a flood of more buyers are going to enter back into the marketplace, which of course is a good thing. But for veterans that are in a position to buy today, and they're just kind of uncertain as to whether or not they should, I think it'll be a good idea to get out in front of this, because if more buyers come back into the market, they're going to be competing with other buyers for that inventory. And now all of a sudden the deals that were once there may not be. So I share all of that to say, if you guys haven't got on, or excuse me, haven't connected with a VA loan specialist yet, somebody that really understands VA loans, consider doing so. And if you're not ready yet, you're not ready yet. And that's okay. And when you are ready, you'll be ready to get out there, right? But just know that this could be changing if interest rates do decrease here coming. So Mick, you asked the question, can a VA loan build a house? Answer might surprise you. You guys ready for this? The answer is yes. Okay, there is such a thing called a VA construction to perm build. Now it is nuanced, right? But you are still going through kind of the standard approval practices, right? You're submitting a credit application with a mortgage loan originator. You're submitting your W-2s, bank statements, pay stubs. However, you are building a house. And with that request, Mick, comes additional items needed. For example, right? You're going to need to have the plans, right? The schematics of the house to be completed. In addition to that, right? You're going to need to have a copy of the bid. There you go, the bid. How much is it going to cost your build as well, right? So once you gather all of those things, now here's a little known fact, Mick, that a lot of people don't know. You can actually add in, right, the acquisition of the land into the purchase. So you can kind of bundle those together. So Mick, if you have more questions about this stuff, I'm happy to set up a time to speak with you. But the last thing that I want you to know about, which is unique to VA, Mick, is that you don't pay interest during the construction phase. Okay, that is a really neat feature, right? You're still collecting the interest, but you're not physically paying it, and can be built into the overall cost of the loan. So that is pretty cool. There's some really neat things that can be done out there. Not a lot of mortgage lenders know or understand how to do this with a VA loan. So I do think it's important to make sure that you're working with somebody who understands this process. So I see more people are joining the chat. My name is Jimmy Vercellino, mortgage loan originator. I specialize in VA loans. And really, I'm just kind of here hanging out because I told myself I need to be more intentional, right? On Sunday afternoons, hanging out with you guys, answering your VA loan questions. So if you have a question, drop it in the chat box and I'll answer it. No strings attached, right? That way you guys can make an informed buying decision. I did have a text message come through here a little bit earlier today that I wanted to read from a veteran who asked, we're relocating to Florida, want to use a second VA loan and rent out our current home. Have any of the rules changed since your video from 2 years ago? So that's a good question, and I think it's worth noting. I'll kind of package that question by saying a lot of vets don't know they can have more than one VA loan at a time, right? Maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, but you can have multiple VA loans, and a lot of mortgage lenders will tell you that you can't, and that is just not true. So the answer to this veteran's question is, yes, you can. Now in 2025, conforming loan limits increased to 806,500. Okay, 806,500 is the conforming loan limit. Now, what I want you to understand is that conforming loan limit, you can exceed that, right, with no money down if you don't have an existing VA loan. And the reason for that is in 2020, the Trump administration signed into law something called the Vietnam Veteran Blue Water Initiative Act. This lifted the cap on VA loans. So now a veteran can buy a home for as much as they want with no money down if they don't have an existing VA loan, right? With no private mortgage insurance. Now, keep in mind, you still have to qualify by way of income and credit. And really quick, for those of you that are joining the live, I'm just answering VA loan questions, okay? So if you have questions, you're thinking about something, you want to hear from a VA loan expert on it, I'll give you my best answer. Good to go. But what I'm talking about is having two VA loans at the same time. So here's how it works, right? Let's assume that you bought a house in 2022 or whatever, 2020, doesn't matter, for $300,000, okay? Bought that home, lived in it, right? Now you have an opportunity to purchase a home in a more desirable location, bigger square footage house with a pool, whatever the case may be. You can put a renter in that home, right? And you can use the remaining amount of the VA loan that you have left over. So in this case, $300,000 on the first, that means that you've got $506,500 left over to use on the second. You guys following me along on that? So this is a tool that veterans can use to own multiple homes, especially in a market like today where you get to dictate the terms associated with the purchase. Speaking of dictating the terms associated with the purchase, a lot of veterans don't know this, but you can actually get the seller to pay for your closing costs and prepaid items. Many of my clients right now, Mick, I see your question. I'll answer it here in just a moment. But many of my clients are seeing sellers cover a majority of those costs. Now, here's the really neat thing that a lot of people don't know about VA loans is that inside of that seller concessions, you can even use it to pay off your debts at closing. Did you guys know that? Like, sometimes we've had veterans buy out their lease or pay off an auto loan or a credit card or whatever the case may be to help you qualify to get into a home. And these are the types of things that you can do in a market like today where inventory is increasing. So Mick asked the question here, the vet loan is $800K, $806,500 to be exact, Mick. Okay, $806,500. That is referred to as the conforming loan limit. Good to go. So anything above that considered non-conforming. Once again, you can go higher than that, right? If you don't have an existing VA loan. Now I want to take it one step further. Okay. I'm going to roll up my sleeves here for just a second. Let's say in that scenario that I gave you, you bought a home for $300. Now you've got $506,500 left over. Can you go above that? The answer might surprise you, but it's yes. Here's how. You take the difference, okay? So in this case, if you were buying a $606,500, that's a $100,000 difference. You multiply that by 25% and your down payment requirement is only $25,000. So what did you just do there? You put a down payment on a house for 5% of the purchase price and you were still able to use your VA loan. Good to go? You guys follow me along on that? I also wanted to talk about something briefly that you may have heard about, and that is the VA Home Loan Reform Act. Okay, so President Trump just signed this into law. A lot of veterans are asking questions about it. What does it mean for our VA home loan? So I read a statistic that over 70,000 veterans are currently 90 days delinquent on their mortgage, 90 days or more delinquent on their mortgage. That's concerning, right? So you guys hear me advocate all the times for veterans and active duty military to purchase a home, right? To build and create wealth, but we also want them to keep that home. So inside of this bill that President Trump just signed into law, this is designed to give aid and relief towards these veteran homeowners that are currently delinquent on their mortgages. So be on the lookout for that. And if you guys find yourself in this position, the phone number for the VA to get this on the horn, or excuse me, to get this in motion, get them on the horn, 800-827-1000. I'll put that in the chat box here, 800-827-1000. That's the number that you're going to want to call to discuss some of this information with the VA. Michael, I see your question here. Michael says, I'm thinking of using a VA loan option to buy a place. It seems right now with the economy, it's not a good time. Should I wait another year or so? So Michael, you may have just joined the call, but I actually talked about this a little bit, and I think it's a really good time. And the reason why I think it's a really good time is because there haven't been as many buyers that came or have come back into the marketplace yet. And so I suspect that as mortgage interest rates drop, you're going to see even more buyers competing for the existing inventory, right? So if more buyers are competing for homes, guess what's going to happen to home values? They're going to go up, right? And sellers are going to have more options on who they sell their home to. So right now, what I'm personally seeing is veteran buyers are in the driver's seat, and you get to dictate the terms associated with the purchase, ranging from purchase price, right? Negotiating on purchase price, negotiating on seller concessions, right? Getting into the home with little to no money out of pocket, right? So these are all things that you can do. Now, of course, right, Michael, I want you to have a piece about the monthly mortgage payment. And if you're not there right now and you say, Jimmy, interest rates are too high for what I want to purchase, then you may need to wait. And that's okay, because the timing has to be right for you. But what I'm trying to say is that if you are in a position to purchase a home today, you can afford it. Now makes sense. You want to kind of have a contrarian approach, right? You don't want to buy when everybody else is buying. You want to do the opposite because you're able to dictate the terms, okay? No worries at all, Michael. That's why I'm here. I want you to ask questions. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know in the chat box if I did, and if you guys have any more questions on that. And by the way, you guys, if you feel like I've earned it, clicking like on the video always helps too, all right? So I talked a little bit about, kind of what happens with that 800-827-1000 number of VA loans, getting the VA on the phone to help out for delinquent borrowers. What other questions do you have? Yes, I'm happy to hear that you found that information to be of value, Michael. Thank you. One thing that I do want to talk about is VA funding fees, because there's a lot of kind of, confusion about what the VA charges to do a VA loan, right? And so there's something called the VA funding fee. And every veteran pays a VA funding fee. Now, I've talked about this in some of my pros and con videos before, where I say, if you had to discuss a con with the VA loan, it could be argued that it's the VA funding fee. So let me break it down how it works. First time user, veteran uses their VA loan for the first time, 2.15% of the loan amount. Good to go. It's rolled into the loan, or it can be paid cash at closing. Okay. So 2.15% for a first-time user. Now, the VA kicks the cost of doing business up for a subsequent user. Subsequent user, it's 3.3%. So it becomes even more expensive to use our VA loan for the second time. Now, I'm going to give you some strategies, right, on how to completely eliminate the VA funding fee, because it can be done, or reduce it considerably. Here's how. If you're service connected, as little as 10%, right? You're able to get your VA funding fee waived. You ready for this? For life. It's pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Never going to pay a VA funding fee again. Now, if you're putting money down on a VA loan, this can be done, right? Put 5% down, that VA funding fee goes from either 2.15 or 3.3 down to 1.5%. If you put 10% down, it goes down to 1.25. Okay. So these are strategies, and these are ways that you can get your VA funding fee waived. Good to go. Mick, you've got a follow-up question here. How long is the VA loan process from no home to home? Really good question, my man. And interestingly enough, I was shooting content on Friday and I put together this video. And so I haven't uploaded it yet, but I'm not going to make you wait for the answer. All right. So interestingly enough, you can close a VA loan in as little as 7 days. Now, somebody might say, well, who in the world is going to get into a home in 7 days? I hear you. I'm just giving you the true technical answer, okay? 7 days. However, generally speaking, you close a VA loan roughly 30 days or so, all right? Now, it just depends on your individual needs, right? Depends on the needs of the seller, depends on the needs of the buyer, in this case, you, Mick. But I budget for about 30 days. Now, what part of that question it doesn't answer for you is, when should you start the process? Now, that's a different question, but also a good question, right? I typically advise my veterans to submit an application within 90 days from the time that they want to be in a home. So if you think about it, right, you submit the application, give it a week or two before you receive your conditional loan, or excuse me, your conditional pre-approval, right? Now you've got that. Now you've got an additional, call it, 2.5 months to go out there and start shopping for a home, get under contract and close on it. So I'd say 90 days from the time that you ideally want to be in your home, right? Consider getting that loan application submitted, right? Which brings me to my next point. What are some of the items that you're going to need when you're buying a home, right? That's a good question. So think of it like this: W-2s, right? We call it the rule of twos. 2 years of tax returns, right? 2 years of W-2s, 2 months of bank statements, all pages, even if the page is blank. Yes, I know it's silly, but we got to have it, right? Photo ID, VA service-connected disability award letter. Generally speaking, that'll get you on the right track, keeping in mind that it just depends on each veteran's individual scenario on some of the items that they'll need. Had another question come in here. This might be a dumb question. There are no dumb questions, brother. I just appreciate you guys asking. We're hanging out here together. But is there an age limit to when you have to use your veteran's loan? I've been out of the military for a while now, and I'm looking to buy in the next year or so. Really good question, my man. So unlike the Montgomery GI Bill, right, our VA home loan never expires. It never goes away, right? You can use it as many times as you would like. So Michael, it's a good question. And it's a question that a lot of veterans think that we somehow lose our VA home loan entitlement. Not true. Okay. You can use your VA loan. I mean, we can't even discriminate on age, right? Veteran wants to buy a home at 80, 90 years old. Hey, come right up, right? As long as you qualify, you can still use your VA home loan regardless of when you served. I've personally helped out Korean War vets before, you guys. So yeah, VA loan never expires, never goes away. You can use it as many times as you would like. Roger that. So I appreciate you guys asking all of these questions, by the way. These are all fantastic, and I hope you're enjoying. Kevin, what's up? Kevin asked the question, will the VA allow me to build a lot and build, right? Or to buy a lot and build? The answer, Kevin, is yes. Actually talked about this just a little while ago and unpacked the VA construction to perm loan. This is kind of one of the most common phone calls that I get from veterans on my YouTube channel. And they're asking like, hey, can I buy a house? Can I build a house with the VA loan? The answer is absolutely yes. So I've got Mick here with me. Mick asked this question, and here's what I told him, right? Get a copy of the bid, get a copy of the plans of the house, submit a loan application. You can actually lump together the land and the build into one. Okay. So generally speaking, you want to try and have the build completed within 1 year. If you have more questions on that, you're welcome to reserve a time to speak with me. Roger that. So Michael says this is extremely helpful. I'm sure I speak for all veterans, and big thank you. Hey man, I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot. So John asked the question, how do I get a loan application submitted? Good question. You can go to my website, VALoansForVets.com. I'll put it in the chat box here, www.VALoansForVets.com. So before you submit an application, Kevin, I'd always kind of recommend having a pre-purchase or preliminary mortgage consult with me so I could look and learn / understand a little bit more about what's important to you, what it is that you'd like to do. So that way we can custom fit the mortgage to your individual needs. Roger that. So here's something else that I think is worth mentioning here. And I talk about custom fitting a mortgage to your individual needs. What does that mean? Right. And so a lot of times I see clients of mine or veterans that go to other places. That's okay too, right? As long as they're working with somebody who they trust and knows the VA loan process. But I have a concern about that. And I too often think that mortgage companies just qualify a veteran for any amount, right? And say, okay, you're qualified to $500,000, go out and find a home. It's like, wait a second, where does your opinion come in here? Right? Because after all, you're the one making the mortgage payment, not me, right? Like seriously. So I should be asking you, where do you want your mortgage payment to be? And if you said, Jimmy, I want to be at somewhere around $200,000, or excuse me, $2,000 a month, then I'd say, okay, well, maybe we should be looking at the 225 to 250 or 275. In other words, what does that mortgage payment translate to in the form of a purchase price? Right. And then that way, when you go out and you start looking for homes, right, you have the peace of knowing that you're purchasing a home that is in alignment with your budget. I'm getting ready to upload another video here, probably today or tomorrow, but it's like BAMSIS your way into home ownership, right? And so BAMSIS for my Marines. By the way, if you're watching this live stream really quick, do me a favor, sound off on what branch of service were you in here? Do we have any Marines in the building here? Any Marines in the building? Sound off which branch of service you're in. I'd love to hear from you. Michael's asking the question. So for a VA loan, is it more favorable to opt for one of the opt in over the other? In other words, a house, condo, townhome, single guy, don't want a huge house, and you'd love a condo. Yeah, man. I don't think, Michael, you can go wrong on any of those. I think it just depends on kind of what you feel most comfortable, right? And what is in alignment with your needs. Nice thing about owning a condo, right, is that there's kind of the HOA, which covers the common areas, the maintenance and things of that nature. So yeah, I just kind of look at the pros and cons between all of them and then make an educated decision on what's best for Michael here, right? Not anybody else. So Michael's Army, HUA, right? Kevin, what's up? Navy, love to see it. Jay, Air Force. I see that emoji there. Earthling Army. All right. Outstanding. So I don't see any other Marines in the building here. So looks like we are outnumbered. You know, I do want to briefly talk about something that I'm not going to say is, I don't know. I want to be diplomatic here when I share this, but there are a lot of what I would consider to be VA influencers, right? And if you search long enough, if you search hard enough, you'll probably say, is that the guy that Jimmy's talking about? And the answer is probably so. May not be, but probably so. And so a lot of people will tell you that you can do all of these amazing things with your VA loans. I would just say this, proceed with caution, because if somebody is teaching you how to do something and sign up for my course and I'm going to teach you how to do X, Y, and Z. I actually attended one of these courses because I wanted to know what they were talking about. And, you know, there were some things that were said in these courses that arguably weren't true, not arguably, objectively weren't true, right? And so if somebody's not a licensed mortgage loan originator, right, I would just caution you to really make sure that you're checking the facts and that you're working with somebody who specializes in VA loans, who is a mortgage loan originator, and is really going to give you the truth. Because the last thing that you want to have happen is get under contract on a property, you know, be told all of these things and then have them not come to fruition and you're like, damn, right? So if you haven't already done so, you're welcome to check out my channel. I've got an abundance of videos on VA loans that you guys are welcome to check out and educate yourselves on. So Michael said that because I'm glad I've been looking into a round of some of these people and I just don't believe they come off as a straight shooter, which I appreciate immensely. Right on, dude. So yeah, I mean, just proceed with caution. Okay. So what's up, Dennis? United States Army, 82nd Airborne. Outstanding. You love to hear it. Still don't have any Marines in the building yet. What's up with that, Marines? Wake up, get out of the rack. So what other questions do you guys have for me here? All right. What other questions do you guys have about VA loans? I've talked a little bit about, you know, what I think could happen to interest rates. I do suspect that they'll be going lower in the coming months. From things that I'm reading online, there's virtually a 90% probability, according to JP Morgan, which they're estimating the Fed will lower the Fed funds rate. Now, do you guys know what the Fed funds rate is and what it does? I think there's a lot of confusion on this, actually. I think that a lot of people hear that and they just automatically go, well, interest rates are going to drop that day. So here's the way I explain the Fed funds rate. It's designed to cool down or heat up the economy, okay? So a textbook definition of the Fed funds rate is the rate at which banks lend money to each other overnight. You follow me along on that? So the rate at which banks lend money to each other overnight. So when the Fed either decreases or increases the Fed funds rate, if they decrease it, they're trying to kind of, fan the flame of the economy, stoke the fire a little bit, right? If they increase it, they're trying to cool it down. Right. So there was a jobs report that came out a couple of weeks ago, much lower than expectations. And generally speaking, for all my veterans in the room, if you really kind of want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the economy, right? Generally speaking, bad news for the economy is good news for mortgage interest rates, right? So what happens is money flows out of the stock market and into mortgage-backed securities, which pushes interest rates lower. And vice versa, when there's a really strong jobs report, Americans are spending money, right? Everything's going great. Money flows out of mortgage bonds and flows into equities, and that pushes interest rates higher as a result. So when the Fed decreases the Fed funds rate, essentially what they're saying is we want the economy to pick up a little bit, right? It doesn't mean that a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is going to go lower on that day, or a VA loan interest rate is going to go lower on that day. It just means that the economy is cooling down a little bit, and they want to kind of, again, stoke the flame, fan the flame of the economy to help things spend. Now, kind of on the bigger picture, right? Once again, bad news for the economy, good news for interest rates. We think that this is going to help interest rates go lower based off of what Fed Chair Powell states or talks about in his testimony afterwards. But that's just my kind of general feeling about interest rates as a whole. And really what that's designed to do is impact things like auto loans, credit cards, home equity lines of credit, and lastly, adjustable rate mortgages. Those things will become cheaper immediately. So Al says, thank you for your service, everyone. Can one use their home loan benefit without a job, strictly relying on disability benefits, or having a job necessary? Al, this is a really good question, sir, and I appreciate you asking it. And the answer is absolutely yes. I have veterans, what feels like daily, right, submit loan applications with me, and they're just simply using their VA disability income to qualify. So that can absolutely be done. Now, obviously, it depends on how much you're earning and how much you're wanting to qualify for, right, which will impact, right, your purchasing power. But yes, if a veteran's receiving VAD and Social Security all day long, or even just VAD alone, they can still use their VA loan. Absolutely. So great question, Al. I see 18 people are here on the chat with us here. So thank you guys. And if you haven't asked a question yet, please do so. This is your time. I don't really have a set agenda to really kind of discuss everything. Al, does that answer your question? Throw it in the chat box there if I answered your question, sir. But one thing that I do think is worth knowing is VA credit scores, right? What is the VA credit score in order for you to be able to purchase a home? So John asked the question, do you lend in New York? Yes, sir. Lend nationwide. New York happens to be one of those states, right? So yeah, be honored to help you, sir. Interestingly enough, a lot of veterans hit me up from this channel from New York. Wonder why that is. But credit scores on VA loans, that's a good question. What if I told you there are no credit scores on VA loans? A lot of people don't know that, right? They're like, wait, there are no credit scores on VA loans? Well, I'm going to explain how the VA loan truly works. And a lot of people won't tell you this, but here's the deal. We say VA loan, but I'm truly not using the proper terminology. Okay. I'm going to tell myself here for a second. What it is it's a VA guaranteed loan, veterans. You following me on that? So the VA doesn't really do anything other than guarantee the loan by 25%. That's it. So if you think about it, you borrowed $100,000 from the bank. The VA kind of just steps in and says, "Hey, John," you go, "Yeah, you know that that veteran that you just made that loan to, John, I'm assuming that you're the VA really quick, or that you're the lender really quick, okay? But John, you know that loan that you just made to that veteran? Yeah. Well, in the event that that veteran defaults, I'll back you up by 25%. In other words, I'll cut you a check for 25% of the loan amount." Veterans, that's all the VA does, right? That's all they do. Now, Mick, hold on, all right? Don't get too excited on that, right? I'm trying to make a point here, brother, all right? But here's the reality of the situation. Mortgage lenders do require credit scores. So even though the VA doesn't make any mention of a credit score in the VA lender's handbook, right, the lender, the one who's actually lending the money, does. You tracking with me on that? So that's why it's important for you guys to understand, right, that different lenders have different credit score requirements. And just because you're told no by one lender doesn't mean that you can't get a VA loan somewhere else. You tracking? So Here's what I tell my veterans. Yes, I can go down to 580, right? Some lenders might tell you they can go down to 540 or 500 or whatever. But just because you can get a VA loan at 580 doesn't mean that you should. In other words, are you in a position of strength or weakness going into this purchase? And we have to have that kind of conversation or discussion. So I generally recommend that my veterans have a 620 credit score. And the reason why is because it's going to increase the likelihood of approval, number one. And number two, you're going to get more favorable financing terms, right? In other words, you don't want to pay more for interest on a property than you need to. You tracking with me on that? All right, good to go. So Diane, welcome. Thank you for being here. Diane asks, veteran wife and mother, U.S. Coast Guard, right? Can you refi a VA loan into a VA loan if rates go down? So Diane, tremendous question. Thank you for asking. The answer is yes, you can. There's two different types of VA refinances. One is considered a cash out, right? So if you were moving out of a conventional loan into a VA loan, that's still considered a cash out, even though you're not pulling any equity out. It's the government. They make the rules, right? And they make the names, but it's not truly a cash out, but that's what they call it. So moving out of a conventional loan into a VA loan. There's also another type of VA refinance called an IRRL, okay? Interest rate reduction. That's not a word. Interest rate refinance reduction loan. There we go. And so this allows a veteran to lower their interest rate with no appraisal, no income documents, no asset documents. Okay, they call it a streamlined refi, right? So the way I kind of like to describe it is you shuffle some paperwork and 30 days later you close on your loan. So this can absolutely be done. You're lowering the interest rate on an existing VA loan to another VA loan, not having to go through the full credit qualifying piece again, or I should say the income qualifying piece again. Okay, you still have to have the credit scores necessary. There are costs associated with it, but they can be rolled into the loan as well. Now, Diane, you could get a lot of information. Keone, I see your question here. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to answer it in just a second here. But if you already own a home and you're a veteran, you're going to get a lot of documentation in the mail that looks like it's, you know, what do they say? If it looks too good to be true, it probably is, right? So just be careful. But they're going to say that VA rates have gone down to some, you know, crazy amount. But what they don't show you there is the costs associated with that. So just be careful. Oftentimes, like even for my clients, they pose as me. They go, you know, referencing Luminate Bank, you're eligible for, you know, this refinance or whatever. And they're like, hey, Jimmy, did you send me this mailer that I can refi? I'm like, no, somebody else did using my name. All right. So just be careful with that. So Keone asked, thank you for your patience, Keone. Hey, Jimmy, thank you for doing this. Been a VA homeowner, there we go, for 3 years now, but want an opportunity to refinance to a lower payment. What are the requirements and procedures to refinance with a VA loan? So Keone, let me know if I just answered that question for you and kind of discussing VA loan refinances or not, or if there's a more specific question that you have. I hope I did, but if I didn't, just go ahead and drop another comment there in the comment section and make sure that you ask away. What other questions do you guys have for me? Is there anything out there related to interest rates, qualifying for a VA loan, VA funding fees, right? The documentation needed. Is there anything specifically that you guys would love to ask that maybe you are wondering on how the VA works? I can keep going for a long time. I could talk about VA appraisals too, but I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But I think I'll briefly discuss it because, you know, there's a lot of VA loan haters out there. Did you know that? Like, you know, I love Dave Ramsey, right? Dave Ramsey has taught me a lot. And you may have heard me say this before, but Dave Ramsey is the one that told me that when making a buying decision, look for somebody with the heart of a teacher and not the heart of a salesman. And that's something that I've tried to adopt and incorporate into my mortgage practice, right? But that doesn't mean that I have to agree with Dave on everything, right? Respectfully, I can disagree on the fact and, you know, not insult him because I think he does a lot of great work, but I don't agree with his take on VA loans, where he says that VA loans are more expensive than any of the big three with regard to fees and things of that nature. I'm like, Dave, who told you that, brother? First of all, VA rates tend to be anywhere from 3/8 to 3/4 of a percentage point lower than conventional. VA loans don't have private mortgage insurance, okay? Compared to FHA, right? PMI never expires or goes away, right? And if you're borrowing more than an 80% loan to value ratio on a conventional loan, you're also going to pay for PMI. And don't let Dave or some real estate agent that thinks that they know what they're talking about when it comes to VA loans talk you out of using this benefit. Because quite frankly, it's upsetting to me because there's so much bum scoop that kind of, makes its way through the marketplace, and people will say things all the time about VA loans, and I'm just like, dude, not true. I don't know who told you that or where you got that from, but it's bum scoop. By the way, if you guys feel like I've earned it so far, if you'd show your love, consider liking the video. It just helps to educate more veterans across YouTube. But I did want to talk about the VA appraisal process, but I just saw a comment come in here. What if you're looking at purchasing a duplex in Texas? You're living on VA compensation. Your credit score is 640. Do they have grants for 100% disabled veterans to help reduce the principal? So I think what you're asking, Dennis, is, are there any sort of first-time homebuyer programs? And yes, there are. They're all over the country. Now, you have to be kind of aware of the specifics of purchasing and kind of the requirements of the down payment assistance. Like one thing that would cause me concern to just kind of blanket statement that, approval for that is say, well, you want to make sure that you can do it on a duplex, right? But yeah, I mean, I've helped out veterans from this channel buy multi-unit dwellings all over the nation. And so, yes, you can. What has to happen, we have another veteran shopping right now who found me on YouTube. He's shopping in Georgia and around the Atlanta area, and he's using the prospective rent from one of the units in order to qualify. This is pretty cool stuff, right? So you can actually do, Dennis, duplex, triplex, or even a fourplex. All right. So this is pretty cool stuff that you can do with a VA loan. So I hope that that answers your question. So Mick asks, what is a limit for a home price as it relates to income? Is there a mortgage rate calculator? So Mick, I have videos on this if you want to get a good gauge on what a veteran should be shopping for as it relates to their income. But here's the way I'll explain it. Okay. VA does not use generally debt to income ratios to qualify veterans. They use something called residual income. And so there's a chart, right? And you can look up this chart online, residual income requirement. Basically, the way it works is they take your gross monthly income, right? They deduct out, what's the first thing? Two things in life that are certain, and that's death. And what's the other one? Type in the chat box. Taxes, right? Taxes. So they deduct out your taxes. They deduct out the mortgage payment. They deduct out any liabilities that you have on your credit report. They even deduct out the monthly maintenance and utilities. And Mick, what happens is that net number that they're left over with, right? They essentially compare that against the residual income requirement. And if you are north of that number, you qualify from an income perspective. And this is the reason why, there you go, Al. This is the reason why you see VA loans allowing for higher debt to income ratios than most. All right. So these are the things that you have to keep in mind. VA loans are unique. It's a common sense approach to underwriting, which I appreciate, always have. And there's just, there's a lot of people that still don't understand them. And you maybe have heard me talk about this in some of my videos. It's like, look, just because somebody can originate a VA loan, does it mean that they should? That's a good question, right? And the answer is no. Like, just because I was in the Marine Corps doesn't mean that I should be working on electrical equipment on an aircraft, right? I was an 0311 infantryman. It's like, no, Jimmy, we don't want to get on that bird. And the reason why is because, well, you may not ever arrive to your final destination on time or if at all, right? It's the same thing with a VA loan. If you want to arrive at your final destination, which is home ownership, you've got somebody on there that's not, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and they don't understand what in the world they're doing. Well, guess what? That can affect your ability to purchase a home, right? So make sure that make sure that the loan originator that's assisting you, if it's not me, right? Make sure that they're competent, make sure that they're proficient and efficient with the VA home loan process. So what is the limit for a home price? Okay, so I think I answered your question, Mick. If I did, do you guys have any other questions for me? We've been going for about 40 minutes here. You guys are keeping me busy. I like it. I appreciate it. That's why we're here. That's what we want. Educate more veterans and active duty military. If you guys haven't already done so, consider checking out the channel, right? It's a lot of videos on there and tools that you can hopefully, learn more about the VA home loan process. Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, that takes me to about 40 minutes. If you guys feel like I've earned it, consider showing your love, liking the video. It helps to promote the channel and educate more veterans. But, I never talked about the appraisal piece. I feel like I've got to briefly discuss that because a lot of VA loan haters will cite the VA appraisal piece and they'll go, well, there's that VA appraisal, it's going to ruin the deal. And when I say VA loan haters, it could be, your brother-in-law who's a real estate agent who thinks he knows about VA loans when he really doesn't. No offense, but we love him, but everybody's got that one brother-in-law, right? Or it could be, just an agent in general who thinks they know what they're talking about when they don't. So here's how the VA loan appraisal process works. And if you guys don't have any more questions, I'll probably end it here. But when you get under contract on a property, okay, what happens is me as the mortgage loan originator, we order the appraisal, okay, and it's automatically assigned to a licensed appraiser who is, and this is the key word, contracted by the Department of Veterans Affairs. What it does not mean is that they work for the VA. Are you guys following me on that? Like a lot of people hear VA appraiser and they go, oh my gosh, some, deadbeat government official is going to go appraise this property. It's like, no, that's not how it works. And by the way, I have a video where I interview a VA appraiser. His name's Jay Joseph. He's a great dude, right? And he pours into us as veterans. And I ask him a ton of questions. And one of the questions that I asked him was this: Jay, when you appraise a property on a VA loan, does it impact the value at all? And here's exactly what he told me. Jimmy, I don't care what kind of loan the client is getting. I am going to arrive at my opinion of value the same exact way using the recent comps that have sold on this or in this area. That's it. So when people say that VA appraisers take longer or they're more conservative, it's like, dude, they're individual appraisers, ABC appraisal services, XYZ appraisal services, right? They don't work for the VA. And here's the neat thing about the VA appraisal process that many people don't know. There's a built-in, it's referred to as a tidewater, excuse me, a tidewater notice. And that tidewater notice means that the appraiser has gone out to the property, and if the property is not going to appraise, they issue this tidewater notice. And what that tidewater notice means is that you have 48 hours to provide additional comps that support, okay, the value of the property. And so there are no other appraisal types that will allow for this, you guys. Did you know that? Like if you got an FHA appraisal, the appraiser's not going to notify you and say, hey, there could be an issue with value here and provide us with additional comps, right? VA does that. And if you're wondering like, Jimmy, why in the hell would I do that? Well, that's a good question, right? Maybe you want to let the value come in below, and that's okay. Or maybe in order to keep the deal together, because you know the seller's not going to reduce the price, maybe you want to provide the appraiser more comps. But what this is designed to do is two things. Number one, make sure that the veteran is not overpaying for a property. And number two, right, make sure that they have a chance to lobby for the value before it's issued to ensure that they're getting a fair shake, right? So don't let people tell you that VA appraisals are more difficult or more conservative or strict. We have VA appraisals coming in right now anywhere from 7 to 10 business days. Now, have I had a bad VA appraisal before? Of course I have, but I've also had a bad conventional and FHA. And being that 90% of my business is VA loans, I see a lot of VA appraisals and the majority of them come in at value. Good to go. So Quessy, what's up? Quessy has a question here. Hello, Jimmy. I was just approved for $400,000, but here in South Florida, that is not a whole lot. Should I wait another year to lower my debt to income ratio and reapply again in a year? That's a good question, Quessy. And, you know, I would consider getting a second opinion if you want to qualify for more. And I'm not sure what time you joined here, but there are strategies that you can use to pay off debts at closing with seller concessions to help you pay off debts, allowing you to qualify for more. And if I could be that second opinion for you, I'd be honored to do so. But some mortgage lenders approach approvals more conservatively than others. So yeah, second opinions on the largest financial transaction of one's life is never a bad idea. And if the second person says, whether that's me or somebody else, tells you, yeah, you're right at around that 400, then, you have to ask, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? The juice qualifying for more, the squeeze waiting for 1 year. And then you need to make an educated decision on what's best for you and your family. So that's how I would answer that for you. Let me know if I answered the question. Do you guys have any other questions over anything at all? So, by the way, let me know your thoughts. I need to start connecting with you guys more frequently other than just my weekly uploads on VA loans. Do you guys like this format? Is it valuable? If so, type it in the chat box so that way I can kind of know, is there anything that I discussed that maybe you'd like to learn more about that I haven't covered for future videos? If there's something that's really important to you, I'm going to go for a little bit longer here and just make sure that I don't have any last minute burning desires. Diane says, yes, very valuable. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear. Is there anything that you think that I should be talking about that I haven't yet? Anything that's important to you that you'd like to know? Thank you, Jay. Appreciate the kind words, sir. Anything that's important to you guys that you'd like to know about? All right. Well, I think that that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. Thank you guys for attending Sunday night live VA loan sessions. I'm going to do this more often. Like I said, if you felt like I earned it, consider showing your love, liking the video, so that way we can boost it out to more veterans and active duty military moving forward in the future. Al, appreciate it. Al says, great info. That's always good. What do you guys think about the sign right here? We don't promise you a rose garden. All right. That's an old school Marine Corps recruiting poster from the 1980s. One of my favorites here. All right. So I'd like to know up and up locations for veterans. Quessy, how do you mean exactly? I'd like to know up and up locations for veterans. Are you talking about like locations to purchase? Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Keone says, yes, this is really important stuff. I tell my sailors all the time to subscribe to your channel to learn more about VA home buying. I love that, Keone. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. That means a lot. That's outstanding. So, okay. So, Quessy, with respect to your question, I think that that's what you want to have a real estate professional advise you on, questions in surrounding neighborhoods. What area are you looking at? I think you said Florida, right? Is that South Florida? By the way, I'm seriously considering moving to Florida, you guys, East Coasting it. I'm in Arizona right now, Diane, but I lend nationwide. My wife and I traveled to Charleston, South Carolina about a year ago. I'm coming to Savannah here pretty soon, you guys. I'm excited. I help a lot of vets out from this channel in Georgia. So maybe we'll have to have a VA loan meetup or something like that. That might be kind of fun. But yeah, I'm considering moving to the East Coast. Love it out there. And I've been in Arizona for 20 years. So that's it's been a long time, but I don't know, just kind of excited. Yes, move to Florida Space Coast. Love it, love it, love it. A lot of fishing there too. One of my dear friends from the Marine Corps lives in Orlando and big fishing. So we might have to get into that. But listen, guys, I'm not hard to find. If you have follow-up questions, okay, you can always email me at jimmy@valoans4vets.com. Okay. You're also welcome to go to my website, valoans4vets.com. All right. And yeah, if you'd like to reserve a time to speak with me, you can schedule a free 15-minute consult. I'll make myself available for you personally, individually. If you have a specific question that you didn't feel like dropping in the comment section or the chat, that's what I'm here for, right? To make sure that you guys are educated. And if you know a veteran or active duty military service member that wants to learn more about VA loans, well, that's what this channel is for. Roger that. So listen, appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to you soon.